Have you ever noticed that the harder you try to be the right guy, the faster she loses interest? That the more you demonstrate that you are trustworthy, honest, and respectful, the more distant she becomes, as if your value lies precisely in what you don't show. There's a hidden logic in the dynamics of attraction that few men dare to admit. Being a good man doesn't make you desirable, it makes you disposable. What seems like a virtue, in practice, acts as a silent repellent. Because the real world, contrary to what modern fairy tales say, doesn't reward the predictable, the safe, the correct. It rewards impact, and impact demands risk. The marriage material is a socially constructed character, shaped by collective expectations that have nothing to do with the game of attraction. He talks about stability, the future plans, and forgets the present. He forgets the moment. He forgets instinct. And the woman, however much she says she wants commitment, is driven by emotion, not logic. She seeks intensity, not stability. And when you appear selling security before creating desire, you don't seem trustworthy. You seem needy. You seem desperate to be validated as worthy of love. And that's the most foul smell of the modern world, the smell of neediness. This is where the fatal mistake lies. The man who tries to be marriage material right away believes he's showing value. But in reality, he's putting himself in a position of inferiority. He talks too much. He explains too much. He tries to justify who he is. He flaunts his morals as if they were medals. He displays his principles as if that buys desire. But desire is primitive. It doesn't respect resumes. And every time you try to sell yourself as the ideal guy, you're silently saying, "Please choose me." And nobody desires the desperate. People desire the desired. What happens when you reveal too much of yourself? She hides. She feels she needs to be someone else to please you. And the most dangerous thing? She lies. She holds on to the past, erases the scars, cleanses the history, creates a persona molded to be approved by you. And the result? You fall in love with an illusion. And when the truth comes, because it always does, you're emotionally trapped in a lie. You bet high on a version of her that never existed. And all because you wanted to show value before generating truth. The man who arrives moralistic, judgmental, full of non-negotiable principles, believes he's filtering out bad women. But in practice, he's just being manipulated by the most skillful ones. Because the woman who wants benefits, who wants stability without giving reciprocity, will give you exactly the image you want to see. And while you promote her emotionally, another guy impacts her physically. One listens to her, the other excites her. One takes care of her, the other dominates her. One waits, the other takes. And guess who she can't get out of her head? The man who is too good from the start activates a silent code in the female mind, the code of boredom. She feels she already knows everything about him. She knows where he eats, what he thinks, how he acts. There is no tension, no conflict, no unpredictability. And without that, there is no desire, because desire is born from doubt, curiosity, danger. Desire needs dark zones to survive, and the good man illuminates everything too early. He reveals the end of the movie in the first act, and nobody watches a story to the end if its climax has already been given away in the introduction. Want a clear example of this? Observe her behavior when she meets a proper man and an unpredictable man. With the first, she thinks. With the second, she feels. The first makes her ponder, calculate, evaluate. The second makes her vibrate, smile, surrender. The first asks if he can. The second acts as if he already has permission. And deep down, she respects the one who disorients her more than the one who obeys her. Because the female instinct doesn't desire the servant, it desires the sovereign. The man who doesn't need to please to conquer, who doesn't need to justify himself to be desired. That's why the marriage material loses. Because he plays the game of logic in a field dominated by emotion. He tries to win with arguments while she's choosing with adrenaline. He wants to be chosen for merit while she wants to be impacted by presence. And worse, by showing his principles too early, he becomes predictable. And predictable in the world of attraction is the same as invisible. You become the guy she likes, but doesn't desire. The guy she admires, but isn't attracted to. The guy she recommends, but doesn't choose. And this creates a modern tragedy. Good men being rejected for believing that simply being good was enough. Ethical men being ignored because they confused ethics with attraction. Men who think that showing themselves to be real men will be enough. But the truth is harsh. The more you try to prove you're different from others, the more she feels you're exactly like everyone else who tried to appear different, because a truly valuable man doesn't explain himself. He asserts himself through silence. He is discovered, not sold. He is felt, not explained. Robert Greene, in The Art of Seduction, teaches that the true seducer doesn't talk about himself. He creates space for the other to reveal themselves. He understands that the less he says, the more the other will speak. And the more the other speaks, the more power he has. But the marriage material talks too much. He tries to accelerate connection. He tries to convince with logic. And he doesn't realize he's sabotaging his own game. He's not rejected because he's good. He's rejected because he's not exciting. Ultimately, women desire what takes control away from them, not what offers too much control. And here lies the contradiction that destroys many men emotionally. They believe they are being rejected because they are no good. But the reality is the opposite. They are being rejected because they are too good at the wrong time. And this breaks them inside. It makes them resentful, bitter, reactive. They begin to hate women when the problem was their stance, not their feelings. The problem was showing themselves too soon, not loving. The problem was giving themselves without calibrating. The good man, contrary to what he thinks, is not being tested. He is being molded. He becomes what she wants. He adapts. He fits in. And in the end, she treats him as a resource, not as a conquest. Because what doesn't challenge doesn't leave a mark. What doesn't move doesn't stick. And this doesn't mean you have to be a scoundrel. It means you need to stop selling a version of yourself as if you were in an emotional auction. She doesn't need to know you're trustworthy. She needs to feel that you are free. And freedom, brother, is what generates tension. And tension is what ignites desire. It's hard to say this, but the marriage material is the biggest target of the women who lie the most. Because they know he wants validation so badly that he'll ignore any warning signs. He'll romanticize any sad story. He'll rationalize any inconsistency, because he wants to believe he's finally found someone who recognizes his worth. But if he really had that much value, he wouldn't need to try to convince anyone of it. The man who knows his worth lets others realize it on their own. He doesn't force it. He doesn't explain himself. He just lives. And that's enough. And the most ironic thing? When he stops trying to seem like the ideal guy, he finally becomes it. When he stops selling himself, he values himself. When he stops trying to please, he starts to attract. Because the mystery returns, the tension settles in, and the woman realizes he's not there to be validated. He's there to be chosen by someone worthy, not just anyone. And it is at that precise moment that the good man stops being rejected and begins to be sought after. But for that to happen, he needs to abandon the emotional addiction of trying to be understood. He needs to accept that desire doesn't arise from explanation, it arises from presence. That respect doesn't arise from morality, it arises from silent authority. That value doesn't arise from what he says, it arises from what he represents. And what he represents cannot be explained in words, only felt in the flesh. They say you need to be a man of value, that you should study, work, save money, avoid parties, choose carefully who you get involved with, and then, one day, that woman will appear who will look at you and think, "That's the guy I want for my life." This is the elegant lie that masks the silent defeat of millions of men. Because while you prepare to be the prince, she is living as if she were free from any castle, any commitment, any consequence. And here is the brutal reality. You are playing the game of future choice while she is living the game of present pleasure. You believe you are qualifying yourself to be chosen by an ideal woman, but she is not looking for that now. At least, not while she has time, freedom, youth, and options. While you chase evolution, she's chasing experiences. And worse, she's using guys like you as an emotional escape valve, while she intensely gives herself to those who don't care about pleasing her. This is not theory. This is empirical observation, day after day, story after story, decade after decade. The marriage material character is only interesting once the entertainment script is over. And nobody is called to the stage after the play is finished. This is a common, almost tragic mistake. Men believe they need to be the right guy, too soon. And this transforms them into something she respects, but doesn't desire. Because she doesn't want to choose now. She wants to experience. She wants to feel. She wants to live. And the painful truth is, while you focus on being the best version of yourself for her, she's becoming the version that attracts others. And those others aren't concerned with principles, fidelity, or stability. They're concerned with only one thing: emotional intensity. And that's what wins the game. But you might ask, so all women are like this? No. But every woman has this cycle. And the man who ignores this cycle will be punished with rejection, frustration, and resentment. Because he'll come offering commitment, when what she wants is controlled chaos. He'll talk about the future, when she hasn't even digested the past. He'll want something serious, when she doesn't even know what she wants from her own life. And worst of all, he'll demand exclusivity from someone who hasn't even bothered to be transparent. And that's the central mistake of the man who seeks a relationship before making an impact. He demands a commitment that hasn't been earned. He believes his pure intentions are enough. But intention without context is naivete. And naivete in the modern game is an invitation to be manipulated. Because the woman who is still in exploration mode, and many are, won't reject a guy who offers affection, attention, and stability. But she also won't give him her soul. She'll enjoy what he gives, while desiring what throws her off balance. She'll say she likes him, while thinking of someone else. This woman, who represents a growing percentage in the post-romantic era, doesn't want the guy who offers emotional security. She wants the one who offers raw emotion. And this man, by definition, doesn't sell himself as the ideal guy. He doesn't try to seem trustworthy. He doesn't try to prove he deserves something. He lives, he tests, he observes, he imposes his presence. And because of that, he receives. Without asking, without kneeling, without molding himself. Herein lies the brutality. Most men want to be chosen by a woman who hasn't even chosen herself yet. And so they chase after her, beg for attention, adapt their personality, moderate their masculinity, and sacrifice their freedom in exchange for a promise that is never fulfilled. Because deep down, she's still playing with her own identity. And you're taking seriously a woman who hasn't yet taken herself seriously. The modern woman doesn't want to get married. Not yet. She wants power, she wants control, she wants to prove herself. She wants to feel desired, followed, valued, placed on a pedestal. And when she finally tires of this cycle, usually around 30, then she starts looking for the man to marry. But by then, you've already been shelved, or worse, called back as Plan B. You trained while she tested. And in the end, she wants to reap the rewards of your effort after planting seeds with others. That's why men need to understand the game being played. They can't continue acting as if it were 1950. The cycles have changed. The priorities have changed. The logic of value has changed. Today, the man who positions himself as a solution before being desired becomes a resource. He becomes an emotional utility, an Uber of self-esteem, a sex therapist without sex. And the most tragic thing, he accepts this as if it were luck. What you need to understand, urgently, is that there is no neutrality in social dynamics. Either you impact, or you are used. Either you lead, or you are guided. And in the female emotional game, the man who arrives offering everything without demanding anything is seen as weak. Not because he is actually inferior, but because he seems desperate. And desperation is the opposite of magnetism. Women value what takes them out of control. And men who position themselves as too ready, too accessible, too stable, don't generate a challenge, they generate boredom. And boredom, in an emotionally active woman, is the beginning of the death of desire. She may continue talking to you, going out with you, even sleeping with you. But her soul has already left the table. She is with you in body, but absent in her gaze, because she is not being seduced. She's being taken care of, and care without desire becomes an obligation, and nobody wants to have sex out of obligation. Therefore, men need to stop playing the game they say works. They need to start observing the game that's really happening. They need to understand that women today aren't looking for stability. They're testing possibilities. And in this scenario, what differentiates the magnetic man from the disposable man isn't morality. It's the reading of time. Magnetism isn't about being perfect. It's about being emotionally uncontrollable. It's about not needing her. even when you want to. But here comes the contradiction that challenges many minds. So I shouldn't be good? Of course you should, but don't show it right away. Be good, but mysterious. Be ethical, but unpredictable. Be loyal, but not accessible. Because the modern woman doesn't respect those who give themselves away too quickly. She values what she doesn't fully understand, what challenges her emotions, what makes her feel she needs to prove herself. And the marriage material already gives himself away. She didn't even have to make an effort, and everything that comes easily is treated with disdain. In The Game, Neil Strauss narrates how even the most ordinary men became magnetic when they learned to understand the female cycle. They didn't offer commitment, they offered intensity. And it's this intensity that plants doubt that generates obsession. The man who positions himself as a prize creates competition. The man who positions himself as a solution creates dependence. And no woman falls in love with what makes her feel dependent. She falls in love with what makes her feel challenged, what takes her out of control, what reconnects her to the primal instinct to conquer. So it's not about being a scoundrel, it's about understanding that a woman doesn't want someone ready-made. She wants someone who makes her go off script, who makes her hesitate, who makes her feel. Because when she feels, she surrenders. And only after that, perhaps, does she think about commitment. But you want to do it the other way around. Commitment first, then connection. That never works. The problem is that you were taught to protect your heart by offering it entirely. But in the emotional battlefield, whoever offers too much bleeds first. You want love before you make an impact. You want stability before you provoke desire. You want to be respected before you are felt. And that's why you keep entering the field with armor that only attracts arrows. The magnetic man doesn't talk about himself. He observes. He listens. He doesn't position himself as a judge of female morality, nor as a defender of emotional purity. He positions himself as a mirror. And a mirror doesn't judge, it only reflects. When you act this way with a liberal posture, you create an environment of silent trust. And in that space, she reveals everything you would never discover if you were trying to impress her. She talks about the past, her insecurities, her desires. She opens up because she feels you won't use it against her. And that, for a woman, is rarer than beauty. It's emotional freedom. But what does it mean to be liberal in this context? It's not being permissive, nor passive, nor deconstructed. It's being strategically neutral. It's not showing premature judgments. It's letting the truth reveal itself without pressure. It's understanding that the more you show, the less she talks. But the more you listen, the more she surrenders. The man who arrives saying what he likes, what he doesn't like, what he accepts, what he doesn't accept, is creating a prison where she will behave in the way you approve. And the worst part, you'll believe you're getting to know the real woman, when in reality you're only getting to know the version molded to be acceptable. That's why the liberal man's approach is so powerful. He doesn't arrive with a drawn moral sword. He arrives with silence, with intelligent questions, with a light, unburdened curiosity. He doesn't accuse, doesn't test, doesn't force. He lets the woman be, and by letting her be, he discovers who she is. And when you know who she really is, you have the power to choose consciously. And this is where the game changes. You no longer need to worry about red flags after 6 months of relationship, because you saw everything in the first few dates. You no longer need to test, stalk social media, dig into her past, because she herself told you. Not because you pressured her, but because you didn't judge. You created the kind of presence that melts masks. And that's why you attract more, have sex faster, and avoid falling in love with the wrong woman. This is the method no one teaches. Don't be the judge. Be neutral. Don't show your worth, discover hers. Because while other men are trying to prove they're trustworthy, you're filtering who deserves your trust. And when she senses that, something changes inside her. She realizes you're different. Not because you say so, but because you don't need to. When you stop trying to impress, you start to make an impact. And here's a detail that blows many men's minds. Women are more honest with bad boys than with nice guys. Why? Because bad boys don't judge. They're not there to evaluate whether she deserves a relationship. They're there to live in the moment, to enjoy, to experiment. And that creates an emotional space where she can be herself. unedited, without a mask, without a performance. Even though she knows this guy isn't ideal, she feels that with him it can be real. Whereas with the marriage material, she needs to act. And that's why she sleeps with someone who doesn't judge her faster. Not because she's promiscuous, but because she can only surrender when she feels she won't be condemned. And the liberal man offers that, not as manipulation, but as a reading strategy, as a true tactic. And don't think this is new. In The Art of Seduction, Robert Greene states that the seducer doesn't conquer by imposing, but by creating an atmosphere. And the first element of this atmosphere is the absence of judgment. It's the freedom for the other to reveal themselves. Only then does the seducer know the soul of their victim, and only then does he decide what to do with her. And the difference between the seducer and the seduced is exactly this. The seducer listens before surrendering. The seduced surrenders everything even before knowing who they're dealing with. Therefore, when you position yourself as the liberal guy, you're assuming the most powerful posture in seduction, the silent observer, the man who doesn't need performance, who doesn't need validation, who isn't there to be chosen. He's there to choose. Because he understands that the more neutral your emotional field is, the more truth he will reap. And it's this truth that protects you. Not morality, not principles, not ethics. The raw emotional truth that only appears when a woman feels she can be who she is without punishment. And even if it doesn't turn into a relationship, you've already won. Because you weren't deceived, you saw everything, you knew everything, you chose, with lucidity, with presence, without deluding yourself. And yet, you had what many men try to conquer with flowers, dinners, and promises of the future. Her desire, her body, her emotional attention. All this simply by not trying to seem like the right guy, by not wanting to be the marriage material, by not being in a hurry to show yourself. When a woman meets a man like that, she experiences an emotional short circuit, because she's used to men who sell themselves, who adapt, who present themselves as candidates. But you don't campaign, you don't promise anything, you live, you observe, you listen. And that, for her, is hypnotic, because for the first time she feels she needs to deserve you. That she needs to win your attention, that she needs to prove herself. And at that exact moment, the game changes. And here comes the final irony. When you stop trying to be the ideal man, you become the most valuable. Because value isn't in what you offer, it's in what you filter, in what you don't accept, in what you don't need to say. And when she realizes that, she starts to adapt to you. She changes her tone, she recalibrates, because she feels you're not the type to accept just anything. But you didn't say that, she just felt it. And everything that is felt leaves a much deeper mark than what is said.